AITA for calling off my friendship after my best friend lied about me to our group of friends. So this has been a bit of a mess, and I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong here or not. So I'm turning to Reddit to help me figure this out. I, 29F, have been best friends with Sarah, 30F, for about 10 years. We met in college and clicked instantly. Over the years, we've shared almost everything: life struggles, relationship drama, even living together for a time. We've had our ups and downs, but our friendship has always been solid. Or at least I thought it was. A few months ago, a situation happened that made me question everything. We both work in the same industry, though we're in different departments, and we have a pretty big friend group that overlaps. We all hang out regularly: dinners, parties, weekend trips. It's a tight-knit group, and I've been close with all of them for years. Everyone is generally supportive of each other, but like with any group, there's drama now and then. A while ago, Sarah and I were chatting, and she mentioned something that seemed off. She told me that she had overheard some of our friends talking about me. Apparently, some members of the group were saying that I was a buzzkill and that I was always complaining and bringing the mood down. She told me that they thought I was too negative and that maybe I should be more positive when I was around them. I was genuinely surprised and a bit hurt, but I thanked her for telling me, even though I didn't believe it was true. I knew that I wasn't perfect, but I didn't think I was that person in the group. Still, I let it go for the time being, figuring it was just some people venting. A few weeks later, I noticed Sarah acting a bit off around me. She'd become distant, and when I would try to talk to her, she seemed distracted. She didn't engage with me the way she usually did, and I started to feel like something was wrong. It wasn't just me either. Other friends had mentioned that Sarah wasn't quite herself lately, but I didn't think much of it. Maybe she was just going through something. Things came to a head at a group gathering a few weeks ago. We were all having dinner, and the conversation shifted to something trivial, like what would we do if we suddenly won the lottery? Everyone was joking and laughing, but then Sarah made a comment that kind of caught me off guard. She said, well, at least it would be nice if my name didn't always bring the mood down with her negativity. Maybe if she lightened up, we could all enjoy ourselves more. I was floored. I honestly thought she was joking at first, but her tone was serious. The entire table went silent for a second, and I was honestly embarrassed. Everyone stared at me like I was some sort of problem. It felt like she had just thrown me under the bus in front of everyone, and I didn't know what to say. I tried to laugh it off, but I could tell that something was off. Later, I pulled Sarah aside and confronted her about what she'd said. I told her that it was incredibly hurtful, especially coming from her. I asked her why she hadn't talked to me privately if she had an issue with me instead of airing it out in front of everyone. She looked genuinely surprised, almost like she didn't understand why I was upset. She said, I was just being honest. You've been a bit of a downer lately, and I thought everyone needed to hear it. I didn't mean to embarrass you, but it's been building up. She also claimed that everyone else had been feeling the same way for a while, but no one knew how to say it to me directly. I felt completely blindsided. I asked her why she hadn't come to me first, if that was how she felt, and why she didn't give me a chance to explain or apologize if I'd been unintentionally negative. She just shrugged and said it wasn't her responsibility to fix me. I walked away from the conversation feeling hurt and betrayed. To me, it seemed like Sarah wasn't being a supportive friend. She was just jumping on a bandwagon and airing out my supposed flaws without ever trying to have a real conversation with me first. After that, I tried to distance myself from her a bit. I stopped reaching out to her and cut down on our hangouts. I needed time to process everything, but the more I thought about it, the more upset I became. A few days later, I found out from another friend that Sarah had been spreading the story of my negativity to other people in the group, essentially talking behind my back. I felt absolutely betrayed. Not only did she put me on blast in front of everyone, but she had gone and told other people my personal issues without my consent. I confronted Sarah once more, telling her that I felt like our friendship was no longer salvageable if she couldn't treat me with respect and honesty. She was furious. She accused me of being too sensitive and claimed that she didn't do anything wrong by sharing her feelings. She said I was overreacting and that I was just not mature enough to handle constructive criticism. The entire conversation was just her making me feel like I was in the wrong for being upset about how she handled everything. At that point, I told her that I didn't want to be friends anymore. I ended the conversation, blocked her on social media, and walked away from the situation. Since then, our entire friend group has been split. Some people have sided with Sarah, saying that I was being too dramatic and should have just taken her feedback like an adult. Others have sided with me, saying that Sarah was being rude and should have handled things better. I've even had a few people privately message me, telling me they thought Sarah was in the wrong, but they didn't want to get involved. Honestly, I'm feeling really isolated right now, and I'm wondering if I made a mistake by cutting her off. AITA for calling off my friendship with Sarah after everything that happened? Should I have handled the situation differently? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more awesome videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. Thanks for your support. AITA for telling my brother I won't attend his graduation if he doesn't apologize to our parents. I, 26F, have an older brother, Mark, 29M, who just graduated from law school. It's a huge accomplishment, and our family has been so proud of him. Our parents, especially, have always been super supportive of him. They paid for his tuition, helped him out whenever he was in a financial bind, and did everything they could to make sure he had what he needed to succeed. But recently, there's been some serious tension between Mark and our parents. Over the past few years, Mark has become more and more arrogant and dismissive of them. He started acting like he was too good for them, and the way he talked to them became increasingly condescending. This didn't happen overnight, but over time, he became more focused on his own success and less considerate of how his actions affected those around him. It started with him showing up to family gatherings late or not at all, then progressed to him belittling their opinions on things like his career or even their lifestyle. He'd throw around phrases like, "I'm in law school, I don't have time for this," or "You wouldn't understand, you're not educated." His attitude got to a point where it started to feel like he was treating our parents like they were beneath him. It was honestly heartbreaking to watch, especially because our parents had sacrificed so much for him. They've always been humble, hardworking people who did everything they could to give us a better life. It started to feel like he was taking it all for granted. But things reached a breaking point recently. My parents were hosting a small family gathering to celebrate his graduation, and they went all out for it. My mom made his favorite dishes, my dad decorated the house with banners and balloons, and they invited close friends and extended family to mark this huge milestone. The party was supposed to be about celebrating him, but instead of being thankful, Mark was grumpy and dismissive the entire time. He barely acknowledged any of the effort our parents put into making the day special. At one point, my mom asked him if he wanted a picture with her, and he flat out told her, "I'm too busy to take pictures. Don't you think I have better things to do than play into your emotional nonsense?" I could see the hurt on my mom's face, and my dad, who is usually very calm, looked like he might cry. After that moment, things just kept getting worse. He barely spoke to anyone at the party, and when people tried to engage him in conversation, he responded with short, snide remarks. Eventually, he left the party early without even saying goodbye to our parents. It felt like he couldn't have cared less about them, and it honestly made me so mad. When I got home that evening, I called him. I wasn't even sure if he would pick up, but he did. I told him that I was really disappointed in how he treated our parents, and that I thought he owed them an apology. He immediately got defensive and told me I was overreacting. He said that everyone was being too sensitive and that he didn't owe them anything. He said that he worked hard for everything he had and didn't need to be grateful for anything. At this point, I was furious. I told him that if he didn't apologize to our parents, I wasn't going to attend his graduation ceremony. I knew that it would mean a lot to him for me to be there, and I was hoping that it would make him realize how serious I was about this. That conversation ended with him yelling at me, saying that I was being dramatic and that I was ruining what should be one of the happiest days of his life. I tried to explain that it wasn't about ruining his day, but about making sure he understood how much he was hurting our parents. He hung up on me, and I didn't hear from him again until the day of his graduation. When the day came, I still hadn't received an apology. It was like he didn't care about the effect his actions had on our family, and it hurt me more than I could even explain. I didn't go to the ceremony, and I didn't attend the celebration afterward either. I stayed home and spent time with our parents, who were obviously disappointed that I wasn't there. My mom kept saying, maybe he'll come around, but I didn't believe that was going to happen unless he realized how wrong he was. A few days later, I got a call from Mark. He was furious. He told me I was making things worse, and that by not attending his graduation, I was essentially making it all about myself. He said I was punishing him for something he didn't do wrong, and that I was being petty and vindictive. I told him that I wasn't punishing him. I was showing him that his actions had consequences. He said I was being childish, and that was the last time I heard from him. Now, I'm feeling conflicted. I'm starting to wonder if I overreacted. Maybe I should have just let it go and gone to his graduation like nothing happened. I know it's a big deal for him, and I hate that I wasn't there for him during such an important time in his life. But at the same time, I still feel strongly that he needs to learn some respect and humility. I don't think it's okay to treat people, especially our parents, the way he did. So, AITA for telling my brother I wouldn't attend his graduation if he didn't apologize to our parents. AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her kids to my vacation house, even though I paid for it. So I, 32M, have a bit of a situation with my sister, Megan, 29F, and it's gotten to the point where I'm seriously questioning if I'm the asshole here. I need some perspective on this because my family's divided, and I feel like I might be in the wrong, but I'm not sure. A few months ago, I planned a week-long vacation to a small beach house I rented in a remote part of the coast. I've been saving up for this trip for a while, and I was really looking forward to getting away from work and having some quiet, relaxing time to myself. I've been to this house a few times before with friends and loved it. It's peaceful with beautiful views, and there's no one around for miles. The place has a lot of charm, but it's also kind of small and doesn't have a ton of space. So, while I was super excited, I wasn't expecting to host anyone else while I was there. I'm single, and I've been feeling the burnout of working long hours in a stressful job, so this was going to be a solo trip to recharge. I told everyone in the family about the trip as soon as I booked the house, and everyone was really excited for me. My sister Megan has 2 kids, a 5-year-old girl and a 3-year-old boy. Megan's always been a bit of a helicopter parent, and while I love her kids, I've never exactly enjoyed spending extended periods of time with them. They're great kids, but they're high energy, and I've always felt a little out of my depth when I'm around them for more than a few hours. About a week ago, Megan reached out to me and asked if she and her kids could join me at the beach house for a couple of days. She mentioned that she and her husband had some time off and wanted a family vacation, but they were struggling to afford it. She said it would be the perfect opportunity to spend some quality time together, and she emphasized that the kids were really looking forward to it. At first, I was taken aback. I had specifically rented the house for some much-needed alone time. It's a small place, and I didn't think it would be comfortable to have kids running around and taking up space. I also didn't want to be on vacation playing the role of uncle 24/7 when all I really wanted was to unwind. I politely told her that I had planned for it to be a solo trip and that the house wasn't really ideal for a family stay, considering how small it was. Megan didn't take that well. She argued that I was being selfish and that it wasn't fair for me to keep the vacation house all to myself when it could be a chance for all of us to create memories as a family. She said I should be more considerate of her situation since she rarely gets a break from the kids, and this would be a perfect chance for her to relax as well. She also mentioned that she had already talked to her husband, and they were both really looking forward to it. I still didn't feel comfortable with it. I explained that I had been looking forward to some quiet time, and that having kids there would change the whole vibe of the trip for me. She kept pushing, though, saying it was just a few days and that I should be flexible. After a few more back and forths, I reluctantly agreed to let her come for a few days, but I made it clear that I didn't want her kids to be a disruption. I told her that if she brought them, she needed to be fully responsible for them during our time together. The day before the trip, Megan texted me saying that her husband had gotten a last-minute work commitment, so he couldn't make it. She told me she would be coming alone with the kids and that she'd be arriving a bit earlier than planned. I thought this was a bit of a red flag because I was really expecting some time alone before they arrived, but I decided to go with it. When they finally got to the house, I was immediately put off. Megan had packed the car with an insane amount of stuff, and it seemed like the entire house was suddenly filled with toys, snacks, and kid-related paraphernalia. The kids were running around the house, yelling, and I could already feel the peaceful atmosphere I had hoped for slipping away. I tried to keep my cool, but it was hard. I spent the next few hours trying to hide my frustration while Megan acted like everything was fine, chatting with the kids and running after them when they started making noise. The next day, I went for a walk on the beach alone to get away from the chaos for a little while. When I came back, Megan asked me if I could watch the kids for a bit while she took a breather in the house. I agreed reluctantly, but I wasn't happy about it. I ended up spending most of the day entertaining them, taking them to the beach, and doing the things that I usually would have done on my own. Megan barely lifted a finger, just sitting back and relaxing on the porch while I was trying to keep her kids entertained. By the second night, I was exhausted and frustrated. The kids were staying up late, running around the house, and making a lot of noise. I tried to go to bed early, but I could hear them through the walls, and it was impossible to sleep. I snapped at Megan, telling her that I needed a break and that this wasn't what I had signed up for when I rented the house. She apologized and promised things would be quieter the next day, but honestly, I was so worn out by that point that I just wanted to pack up and leave. I spoke to her privately later on and told her that I was really upset with how everything had turned out. I told her that I felt like I hadn't gotten the chance to relax, and that the vacation was not at all what I had envisioned. I also told her that I had felt like I was doing everything while she got to unwind, and it didn't feel fair. Megan got defensive and said I was being unreasonable, that I was acting like a child, and that I should be more understanding of her situation as a mom. She said she was doing the best she could, and that I should be more supportive. The situation has now become pretty tense. Megan says I'm being selfish, and the rest of the family is split. Some of them say I should have just dealt with it for a few days and let Megan have her vacation. Others agree with me and think that I had every right to want my own time and space. I'm really torn because part of me feels like I should have just dealt with it, but another part of me feels like I have every right to have the kind of vacation I paid for. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her kids to my vacation house, even though I paid for it and had different expectations for my trip. AITA for refusing to let my sister's daughter live with me after my sister lied about her living situation. I, 30F, have a sister, Carla, 32F, who has a daughter, Ellie, 10. I love my niece to pieces, and I've always been very close with both of them, especially since I don't have children of my own. I have a stable job, and I've always kept my life in order. I'm financially comfortable, and I've offered help to Carla in the past when she's been in tough situations, like when she needed help with rent or childcare. About a month ago, Carla called me in tears, saying that she had gotten evicted from her apartment. She explained that she was in a tough financial spot, and the landlord had given her a 30-day notice to leave. I asked her what her plan was, and she said she was going to move in with her boyfriend, Zach, and that they were going to find a place together. I felt bad for her, but she assured me that everything would be okay, and she didn't need any extra help from me at the moment. A week later, Carla called me again, and this time she was even more upset. She said things weren't working out with Zach, and she was scared for Ellie. Apparently, they had gotten into a fight, and she wasn't sure if Zach was a safe person to be around anymore. She told me she was staying with a friend, but that it wasn't a long-term solution, and she might need to find another place soon. I told her that if she needed to, she could bring Ellie to stay with me temporarily. I live alone, so there's more than enough room for both of them, and I really wanted to help. She seemed relieved and promised me that she would let me know if it came to that, but said she'd figure it out with Zach first. Over the next few days, I didn't hear much from her, so I assumed everything had calmed down and that she was working things out with her boyfriend. Then, about a week ago, I received a call from Ellie. I was surprised because I hadn't talked to her directly in a while, and she sounded pretty upset. She asked if she could come stay with me. I asked her why, and she hesitated before saying, "Mom said I need to stay with you because she's in a bad situation and doesn't want me to be around." I was immediately concerned and called Carla to check in. She didn't pick up, so I left a message saying that I was worried about her and Ellie, and I needed her to call me back as soon as possible. When Carla finally called me back a few hours later, she said that things had gotten worse with Zach, and she wasn't sure if they were going to be able to stay together anymore. She mentioned how difficult it was to find a place, and how she had no other option but to send Ellie to me while she figured things out. I was frustrated because she hadn't told me the full extent of the situation before, but I agreed that Ellie could stay with me for the time being. I told her to get her things together and bring Ellie over when she could. I wanted to help, and I really thought it was just going to be a temporary arrangement. A couple of days later, Carla and Ellie arrived at my apartment. I was expecting the situation to be difficult, but I was unprepared for just how bad it would get. Carla dropped off Ellie and gave me a quick hug, then left without saying much. Ellie was obviously upset, but she didn't know exactly why her mom had left her with me. I spent the evening trying to comfort her and reassure her that she was safe. I figured that I could help out until Carla got things sorted, but it was clear from the start that this situation was more complicated than I had anticipated. Over the next few days, I tried to reach Carla to figure out what was going on. I offered to help her search for places to stay or find resources to get her back on her feet. She barely responded to my messages, and when she did, it was always vague. She would say things like, "I'm working on it," or "I'll let you know when I know more." Meanwhile, Ellie was becoming more and more upset. She was asking me why her mom wasn't coming to get her and why she couldn't go back home. I didn't have answers for her, and I could see that she was starting to feel abandoned and confused. After about a week of this, I decided to do some digging. I reached out to one of Carla's old friends to see if they had heard from her. That's when I learned that Carla had been living with Zach the entire time. Apparently, they were still together, and while they had their issues, they hadn't broken up. In fact, Carla had never even been evicted. She had just told me that story to cover up the fact that she had been having trouble with Zach and didn't want to deal with the reality of it. She had been lying to me the entire time. I was beyond furious. Not only had she lied to me about the situation, but she had also used Ellie as a pawn in her own mess. She didn't have any intention of fixing things with me or even being honest about what was really going on. I confronted Carla about it, and she admitted that she had been dishonest, but she still refused to take responsibility for her actions. She kept saying that she didn't want to burden me and that she just needed time to figure things out. I told her that I couldn't keep Ellie under these circumstances and that if she didn't get her act together and come get Ellie soon, I would be forced to make some hard decisions. Now I feel conflicted. I want to help, but I don't trust Carla anymore. She's lied to me, and it's clear that she doesn't take responsibility for her actions. I don't want to keep Ellie with me if Carla isn't going to take charge of her own life. I want to support my niece, but I can't keep enabling Carla's behavior. I've told Carla that she needs to apologize to me and show that she's taking responsibility for her life before I'll let Ellie stay with her again. But Carla is angry with me now and says I'm making things worse. She says I'm being selfish and that I'm punishing her for her mistakes. AITA for refusing to let my sister's daughter live with me after my sister lied about her living situation. AITA for refusing to let my best friend move into my house after a breakup, even though she has nowhere else to go. I, 30F, have been best friends with Rachel, 29F, for over 15 years. We met in high school and became inseparable almost immediately. We've been through a lot together: graduation, breakups, family drama, and even living together during college. Rachel and I have always had a very close relationship, and I consider her more like a sister than just a friend. That being said, I've never had to deal with anything like the situation I'm in now. A couple of months ago, Rachel ended a long-term relationship with her boyfriend, Tom, 31M, after finding out he had been cheating on her for almost a year. It was devastating for her, as they had been together for 5 years, and she had been completely blindsided by the betrayal. She moved out of their shared apartment and stayed with her sister for a while. However, Rachel and her sister's relationship has always been a bit strained, and she told me that she felt like she was walking on eggshells at her sister's place. She said she wasn't comfortable there and that she needed a more permanent living situation. Naturally, being her best friend, I offered to let her stay with me for a while. I live in a 2-bedroom house that I bought a couple of years ago. It's not huge, but it's comfortable, and I thought it would be a great place for Rachel to crash while she figured out her next steps. We've lived together before, so I didn't think it would be an issue. Rachel agreed, and we both felt like it would be a temporary arrangement, just until she could get her bearings and find her own place again. I didn't set any real boundaries when I offered the space. I simply told Rachel that I wanted her to feel at home and that she could stay as long as she needed to. However, what started as a few weeks turned into a few months, and now, Rachel is still living in my house. At first, things were fine. Rachel was clearly devastated, and I tried to be as supportive as possible. She spent a lot of time processing everything, which meant she was often at home while I was working. She didn't have a job lined up at the time, and she was still figuring out what to do next. I understood that she was going through a tough time, so I didn't mind her staying with me. We even hung out together a lot in the evenings, watching movies or talking about everything she had been dealing with. However, as time went on, I started to feel increasingly uncomfortable with the arrangement. Rachel wasn't making much progress in terms of getting back on her feet. She had a couple of job interviews, but didn't land anything. She said she didn't want to rush into any decisions and wanted to take time to heal, which I understood at first. But then, it started to feel like she wasn't trying to move forward at all. She wasn't actively searching for new jobs, and she wasn't looking for apartments or even considering other living options. She was spending her days lounging around, either watching TV or scrolling through her phone. I come home after work and find her still in her pajamas, not having done anything productive. The situation really started to get to me when I noticed that Rachel was treating my house like it was hers. She never offered to help with cleaning or anything around the house. I would clean up after her, and even though I mentioned it a few times, it didn't seem to make a difference. She would also leave her stuff everywhere, and when I asked her to keep the shared spaces tidy, she would get defensive and say she was going through a lot. I get that she's been through a tough time, but I started to feel like my home was becoming more of a burden than a sanctuary. Around this time, I also started to feel some resentment building. I've been living in my house for 2 years, and while it's not huge, I've made it a place I really love. I've invested time and money into making it feel like home, and now I was constantly walking around someone else's stuff and trying to figure out how to make space for myself. I felt like I couldn't even relax in my own home without stepping over things or picking up after someone else. And even worse, I felt like Rachel wasn't even trying to make the situation work. Finally, I reached a breaking point. I sat down with Rachel a few weeks ago and told her that I needed her to start making plans to move out. I explained that I couldn't keep living like this indefinitely. I told her that I understood she was still healing from the breakup, but I needed her to start taking responsibility for her own situation. I didn't mind helping her temporarily, but it had been several months, and I couldn't afford to keep living in a crowded house with someone who wasn't making any effort to move forward. I also pointed out that I needed some space for myself and couldn't continue living in an environment where I felt like I had to take care of everything. Rachel was shocked by my request. She started crying and said that she had nowhere else to go and couldn't afford an apartment on her own yet. She told me that she didn't feel like she could lean on anyone else and that she was relying on me to help her through this difficult time. She said that asking her to leave felt like I was abandoning her when she needed me the most. I tried to explain that I wasn't abandoning her, but that she couldn't continue living in my house without making some effort to improve her situation. I said I would be there for her emotionally, but she needed to start figuring things out for herself. The conversation ended with her telling me that I was being selfish and unsympathetic. She accused me of forgetting what it was like to go through a breakup, and that I was being unreasonable by asking her to leave when she had no other options. She said I was just concerned about my own comfort and that I was choosing my house over our friendship. This hurt, and I started to feel guilty for even asking her to move out, but at the same time, I knew that if I let her stay any longer, I'd continue to feel increasingly unhappy. Now, Rachel is really upset with me, and our friendship is seriously strained. She says that I'm not a true friend and that I don't care about her. Our other friends are divided too. Some think I'm right for setting boundaries and giving her a reality check, while others think I should have been more patient and understanding, especially since she has nowhere else to go. My family is also split. They're torn between supporting me for setting boundaries and sympathizing with Rachel for going through a tough time. I'm feeling guilty, but I also know that I'm at my limit. AITA for asking my best friend to leave my house after her breakup, even though she has nowhere else to go. AITA for refusing to let my friend move in with me, after she chose her boyfriend over me. I, 27F, have been best friends with Rachel, 28F, for almost 10 years. We met in college, and we've been inseparable ever since. We've been through everything together: breakups, job struggles, family issues, and we've always been there for each other. Our friendship meant the world to me, and I always thought that no matter what, we'd have each other's backs. About 6 months ago, Rachel started dating Greg, 30M. I hadn't met him in person yet, but I'd heard a lot about him. At first, Rachel was really excited about the relationship, but as time went on, I started noticing some changes in her behavior. She began pulling away from me. She stopped answering my texts as quickly. She would cancel plans last minute, and she would prioritize Greg over me for everything. I try not to make a big deal out of it because I knew how excited she was about him, but I started to feel neglected. Then, a few months ago, Rachel told me that she and Greg were thinking about moving in together. I was happy for her, of course. I knew how much she loved him and how much she wanted that next step in their relationship. But the thing is, Rachel had been living with me for the past year because she had gone through a tough breakup and didn't have the money to get her own place. We had been living together for a while, and while it wasn't always perfect, it worked because we were best friends and had always gotten along. When Rachel told me about moving in with Greg, I was genuinely happy for her, but I also had a sinking feeling in my stomach. She said she was planning to move out of my place and into Greg's place in a couple of months. That's when things started to go south. At first, I thought I'd be fine with it. After all, she had every right to move on and start a life with Greg. But then, a few weeks later, she told me that Greg's apartment was really small, and there wasn't enough room for both of them. So he suggested that she move in with him and that I could just stay at the apartment alone until I found my own place. She said it like it was no big deal, and she kept insisting that I'd be fine. I was taken aback. Rachel and I had always planned to live together for a bit longer, and now she was making it seem like I was just supposed to deal with it. I thought she would want to make sure I had somewhere to stay too, considering that I'd been there for her during her tough breakup and helped her get back on her feet. But instead, she was acting like I was just supposed to fend for myself. I tried to stay calm and explain that I wasn't ready to be left alone in the apartment, especially since I didn't have the money to get my own place immediately. I told her I was still in the process of saving up, and I wasn't sure where I'd go if she moved out. Rachel seemed frustrated and said that I needed to stop acting so dependent and figure things out. She told me that I could crash at a friend's place or even get a roommate, but she didn't think it was her responsibility anymore to help me out. It really stung. I felt like she was being dismissive of my situation. We had always been there for each other, and I didn't expect her to solve all my problems, but I didn't think I'd be left high and dry either. But the more I tried to explain how difficult it would be for me to figure out a new living situation so quickly, the more defensive she became. She said I was being dramatic and that it was just time for me to grow up and stop relying on her. The straw that broke the camel's back was when Rachel told me that she wanted me to be happy for her and that I was being selfish for making her feel bad about her decision to move in with Greg. She said that I shouldn't be making everything about me and that I needed to stop being so clingy. I was in complete shock. The way she was talking to me made it seem like I wasn't allowed to have any feelings about this. It was as if I was supposed to just accept it without any consideration for how much this was affecting me. A few days later, she casually dropped the bombshell that Greg had asked her to move in with him immediately and that she had already started packing up her things. I wasn't even given a chance to talk about how I was going to handle living alone. I tried to talk to her one last time, and I asked if there was any way she could help me out for a little longer until I found a new place. She flat out told me no and that I should have figured it out sooner. She said I should be happy for her and that I was being too emotional. At that point, I realized that this wasn't just about her moving on. It was about her completely disregarding everything I had done for her and everything we had been through together. I couldn't believe that she was so willing to throw away our friendship over a guy. And the worst part was that she didn't seem to care at all about my situation or how I was going to cope with it. I ended up having to ask a couple of friends if I could crash with them temporarily while I figured things out. It's been a couple of weeks since Rachel moved out, and I haven't heard from her much. She's texted a few times to check in, but the tone of her messages feels distant and cold. I've been struggling to find a new place, And honestly, I feel abandoned. Now, I'm questioning whether I'm being unreasonable. It's not like I was expecting her to let me live with her forever, but I don't think it's too much to ask for her to be there for me, especially after everything I've done for her. I feel like she chose Greg over me, and I don't know how to feel about our friendship anymore. AITA for refusing to let Rachel move in with me after she chose Greg over me. AITA for not letting my best friend's boyfriend stay at my place when he showed up uninvited. I, 29F, have a best friend, Laura, 29F, and we've known each other for over 10 years. We met in college and hit it off instantly. We've been through everything together, breakups, moving, job struggles, all of it. Our friendship has always been strong, and we've always been there for each other. I don't have many close friends, but Laura has always been my ride or die, and I thought she'd be there for me in the same way. Over the past couple of years, Laura has been dating a guy named Ben, 30M. At first, I didn't think much of him. He seemed okay, and they seemed happy together. But lately, I've started to have some issues with him. I don't want to say I don't like him, but there are certain things that have been bothering me. Ben has this habit of acting very controlling, especially when it comes to Laura. He's always asking where she is, who she's with, and what she's doing, which I think is a little excessive. But that's not even the main problem. The main issue is how he's been treating me. For the last few months, whenever I hang out with Laura, Ben makes little comments that I find passive-aggressive. For example, if Laura and I are hanging out at my place or going for a walk, he'll text her constantly asking where she is, what she's doing, and when she'll be home. I'm not sure if Laura realizes how much it bothers me, but it's gotten to the point where I've started avoiding hanging out with them together. It's not that I don't want to see Laura, but Ben's behavior has made me uncomfortable, and I can't help but feel like he's trying to control everything. But this past weekend, things got even worse. Laura and I were planning to have a girls' night at my apartment. We were going to watch movies, order takeout, and just relax. It had been a while since we had spent time together without Ben around, and I was really looking forward to it. But the day of our girls' night, Laura texted me saying that Ben was going to be in town for the weekend. He works in a different city during the week, and he was planning to stop by her apartment to visit her. She asked if he could come over to my place too, as she didn't want to leave him alone at her apartment. I wasn't thrilled by the idea, but I said fine, figuring that maybe he'd just stop by briefly. Well, the night went differently than I expected. Ben showed up, and to my surprise, he didn't just come in for a quick hello. He essentially stayed the entire evening. At first, it wasn't so bad. We chatted and ate dinner together, but then it became clear that he had no intention of leaving. It was as if he was trying to insert himself into our girls' night. The vibe was off, and I was starting to get frustrated. Every time Laura and I tried to have a private conversation or laugh about something, Ben would chime in and try to make the conversation about him. I could tell that Laura was uncomfortable too, but she didn't say anything. I tried to shrug it off, but as the night went on, I started to feel like I couldn't breathe. Then, things got worse. Around 9 p.m., Ben suddenly announced that he was really tired and that he wanted to crash at my place for the night. He had his overnight bag with him, and I was shocked. I looked at Laura, and she didn't seem to think it was strange at all. She just shrugged and said, "Yeah, Ben, you can stay here." I was floored. I wasn't prepared to have him stay the night, and I didn't feel comfortable with it. I had planned on having a relaxing evening with just Laura, and now my space was being invaded. I tried to be polite and suggested that maybe he could just head home, but he insisted that he didn't want to drive all the way back to his place at this hour and would be fine on the couch. I knew I had to say something, or else I'd be stuck with an uninvited guest in my own home all night. I turned to Laura and said, "Laura, I really wasn't expecting this. I didn't plan for anyone to stay over, and I don't think it's okay for him to stay the night." Laura looked surprised and said, "Oh, come on, it's just one night. Don't be dramatic." I tried to explain that I just didn't feel comfortable with it, especially since it was supposed to be a girls' night, but Laura started getting defensive. She told me that I was being unreasonable and that Ben would just sleep on the couch and wouldn't bother me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I tried to stay calm, but I was really upset. I told her that I wasn't okay with it and that if Ben was going to stay, I'd rather just cancel the whole night. I didn't want to make a scene, but I also didn't want to spend the night in my own apartment feeling uncomfortable. Laura got upset and said I was being selfish. She said I was overreacting and that Ben was a great guy who just wanted to spend time with her. I told her that I didn't have any issue with Ben, but I was upset that she hadn't even asked me if it was okay for him to stay. She said I should just let it go and that I was being petty. At that point, I felt like my feelings were completely being ignored. I told Laura that I wasn't going to allow Ben to stay at my place if I wasn't comfortable with it. She got angry and left, taking Ben with her. I felt guilty afterward because I didn't want to upset her, but I also felt like I had a right to set boundaries in my own home. She hasn't spoken to me much since then, and when she has, she's been distant. She says I'm being unreasonable and that I should be happy for her in her relationship. Now, I'm wondering if I did the right thing. I feel like I've been there for Laura through everything, and I would have done anything for her. But it seems like she doesn't value my boundaries, especially when it comes to her relationship. I've been really upset by how she's acted since the incident, and I'm not sure if I've ruined our friendship over this. AITA for not letting my best friend's boyfriend stay at my place when he showed up uninvited. AITA for telling my friend she can't bring her boyfriend to my house after she ignored my boundaries. I, 28F, have a best friend, Sarah, 27F, whom I've known since high school. We've been through a lot together, and I always considered her more like a sister than a friend. We talk about everything, and I've always been someone who has supported her unconditionally, no matter what. Sarah has been dating her boyfriend, Mark, 29M, for about 6 months. To put it bluntly, I'm not a fan of him. It's not that I have a personal issue with him. It's more that I just don't think he's a good match for her. She's always been very independent, responsible, and down-to-earth, and Mark, on the other hand, is a bit of a free spirit. He doesn't seem to have a clear career path. He doesn't have stable living arrangements, and he's pretty impulsive. Sarah has always been the type to go for projects, guys who need a little help in life. And it's always been frustrating to watch because it feels like she puts in all the effort while the guy just coasts. But that's her decision, and I try not to judge her for it. So, when Sarah and Mark started dating, I didn't make a big deal about it. I figured I'd get to know him more and see if my reservations were warranted. However, over the last few months, Sarah has been bringing Mark around more often, and it's gotten to the point where he's basically always with her. I can't say that I've warmed up to him. If anything, I've become more uncomfortable with their relationship. He's loud, he's constantly cracking jokes that don't land, and he's a bit too physical for my liking. I've also noticed that when they come over to my place, he doesn't respect my space. He'll leave things lying around, eat food that isn't his, and just act like it's his home. I've always prided myself on keeping my place neat and organized. I live alone, and I like my space to feel calm and comfortable. I don't have many visitors, and I'm very particular about who I invite over. If I'm being honest, I don't feel like Mark fits the vibe of my home. He's messy, doesn't know boundaries, and sometimes just makes me feel uncomfortable. I've mentioned a few times to Sarah that I would prefer if she didn't bring him over all the time, but she's brushed it off, saying she doesn't want to be away from him and that I'm being a bit uptight. A few weeks ago, Sarah asked if she could bring Mark over to my place to hang out for the afternoon. Normally, I'd be fine with it, but I had just gotten back from a long trip and was feeling extremely exhausted. I hadn't had any downtime and had been looking forward to a quiet weekend to myself. I told Sarah that I wasn't up for company and that I really needed some time to recharge. I asked if she could hang out with him somewhere else, and she said she understood. But later that day, I got a text from her saying she was planning to bring Mark anyway because he really wanted to see me, and it's been so long since he's hung out with us. I didn't know how to respond, but I said, please don't bring him. I'm really not in the mood for company today. Sarah didn't respond, but about an hour later, I got a knock on my door. I opened it, and there they were, Sarah and Mark, both standing there with huge smiles. I was floored. I wasn't sure what to say. I didn't want to start a fight, but I also didn't want to cave. I told Sarah that I had explicitly asked her not to bring him over, and she apologized but said she didn't think I'd mind that much. Mark, of course, was completely oblivious to the tension and just walked right in like it was no big deal. I felt my blood start to boil, but I tried to stay calm. I told Sarah that I needed her to leave, that I hadn't had a chance to rest, and I felt disrespected by her ignoring my request. She got defensive and said I was being unreasonable. She said that I was acting like I was the only person who mattered and that I should be more understanding of her relationship. Mark joined in and said, "Come on, we're just here to chill. It's not a big deal. You're overreacting." I felt like I was losing control of the situation. I told them both that it was my house, and I didn't appreciate being disrespected in this way. Eventually, they left, but not without Sarah giving me a long lecture about how I needed to be more flexible and less controlling. She said she didn't understand why I was making such a big deal out of this, and that I was pushing her away with my attitude. After they left, I was furious. I felt like I had clearly communicated my boundaries, and she had completely disregarded them. I spent the next few days stewing over it, and eventually I called Sarah to talk things through. I told her that I felt like I couldn't continue hosting her at my house if she kept ignoring my boundaries like this. I told her I didn't want to deal with Mark being there all the time, and that it made me uncomfortable to have him over when I've asked for space. I said that I didn't have an issue with her dating him, but I did have an issue with the way she was handling the situation. Sarah got really upset with me. She said I was being harsh and that I was trying to control who she could bring into my life. She accused me of not caring about her happiness and said I was being a bad friend for not supporting her relationship. She said I was making it hard for her to balance both her friendship with me and her relationship with Mark, and that I was being selfish for not wanting to compromise. I've spent the last week feeling conflicted. On one hand, I know I need to set boundaries for my own peace of mind. I've been clear with Sarah about what makes me uncomfortable, and I don't think it's too much to ask for respect in my own home. On the other hand, I don't want to lose my best friend over this. She's been so important to me, and I don't want her to feel like I'm abandoning her or that I don't care about her happiness. So, AITA for telling my friend she can't bring her boyfriend to my house after she ignored my boundaries. I feel like I'm in the right, but I also feel like I might be pushing her away, and I'm not sure if I'm being unreasonable. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for asking my sister to pay rent when she moved back in with me after a breakup. I, 30F, have always been very close with my younger sister, Emily, 26F. Growing up, we shared a room, confided in each other, and even went to the same college. After college, we both moved to different cities for work, but we still talked regularly and visited each other whenever we could. A few months ago, Emily went through a difficult breakup. She had been dating her boyfriend, Jason, 28M, for 3 years, and it was a pretty serious relationship. According to Emily, Jason had been emotionally distant for a while, and when she confronted him about it, he admitted that he wasn't happy anymore. They ended things, and naturally, Emily was heartbroken. I was really concerned about her. We've always had a great relationship, so I told her that she was welcome to come stay with me for as long as she needed. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a nice neighborhood, and I have a spare room, so I thought it would be the perfect opportunity for her to regroup and heal. She seemed really grateful, and I told her there were no strings attached. She could stay for as long as she needed to. I also made it clear that I didn't want her to feel like she had to rush into finding a new place or a new job. She was going through a tough time and wanted to be there for her. When Emily first moved in, everything seemed fine. She was quiet and respectful of my space, and we spent time together watching movies, talking, and going for walks. She told me she was focusing on herself and figuring out what she wanted to do next. I was happy to have her around and thought that we were both benefiting from the time spent together. However, after a couple of months, things started to change, and I began to feel frustrated with the situation. It started with Emily not really contributing to household responsibilities. I've always been someone who keeps a clean and organized home, and I do most of the cleaning and cooking. At first, Emily would help out occasionally, but it quickly became clear that she wasn't doing much. She'd leave her things all over the apartment, often forgetting to clean up after herself. I'd come home from work and find the living room in a mess, plates, cups, and snacks just lying around. I would ask her politely to help clean up, and she would say she'd get to it, but it never really happened. Then, I noticed that Emily wasn't being very proactive about finding a job or making any plans for her future. I understand that after a breakup, You need time to heal, but it had been several months, and she wasn't doing much to get back on her feet. She would spend most of her days in her room, watching Netflix, playing video games, or chatting with friends. I'd ask her if she had been looking for job opportunities or if she had thought about moving out, and she'd tell me that she wasn't ready to go back to work yet and didn't want to rush into anything. While I understood that she was still processing her emotions, I started to feel like she was taking advantage of my hospitality. The breaking point came when I had a conversation with a close friend of mine who asked how things were going with Emily. I mentioned that she had been staying with me for a few months, and my friend asked if Emily was contributing to the household in any way. I had to admit that she wasn't. My friend then pointed out that I was essentially subsidizing her lifestyle, and while I was happy to help her out during a difficult time, it might be time to ask her to start paying rent or at least contribute in some way. This made me think. I've always been financially independent, and I've worked hard to afford my apartment. I pay my own bills, and I'm responsible for all of the household expenses. Emily, on the other hand, was living with me rent-free, and she wasn't contributing much in terms of chores or financial support. I felt like I was doing her a huge favor, but I wasn't getting anything in return. I understand that she was going through a breakup and needed support, but I started to feel like I was enabling her to stay in a state of stagnation. So, after thinking it over for a few days, I decided to have a conversation with Emily. I sat her down and told her that while I had been happy to support her during this difficult time, I thought it was time for her to start contributing financially. I explained that I wasn't asking for much, but I needed her to start paying rent. I told her that I had been covering all of the bills and expenses for months, and while I loved having her around, I felt like she should be contributing to the household in some way. I also told her that I was starting to feel like she wasn't taking any steps toward getting back on her feet, and that was concerning to me. Emily seemed taken aback by my request. She immediately got defensive and said that I was being unfair. She told me that she hadn't been able to get over the breakup, and that she didn't feel like she should have to pay rent when she was still emotionally recovering. She said that she didn't want to feel like a burden on me, and that she thought I was just using her to get extra money. She said she felt like I didn't care about her well-being and was treating her like a roommate instead of a sister. I tried to explain that it wasn't about her emotional recovery or how I felt about her. It was about fairness and taking responsibility for her own life. I told her that I didn't want her to feel like a burden, but that living with me was no longer just about supporting her during a rough time. It had been several months, and I needed her to contribute. I wasn't asking her to pay a large amount, but I felt that paying something was the least she could do for living in my apartment. I even suggested a low rent amount that was affordable, but she seemed to think it was unreasonable. The conversation ended with her storming off to her room, and we didn't speak for the rest of the evening. The next day, she came to me and said she didn't want to talk about it anymore, and that she was thinking about what I said. It's been a few days now, and things are still awkward between us. She hasn't offered to pay rent, and she seems distant. I'm feeling torn because I don't want to lose my relationship with her, but at the same time, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask her to contribute. I've been feeling guilty because I understand that she's going through a lot, but I also feel that she's taking advantage of my generosity. I'm torn between wanting to help her and wanting to set healthy boundaries. So, AITA for asking my sister to pay rent after she moved back in with me, following her breakup. AITA for refusing to allow my roommate to have loud parties after she promised she wouldn't. I, 26F, live in an apartment with my roommate, Jenna, 27F. We've been living together for about a year now, and overall, we've had a pretty good dynamic. We're not best friends, but we get along, share the chores, and respect each other's space. I'm not really one for loud parties, but I don't mind some occasional gatherings as long as they're not disruptive. However, there's been an ongoing issue that's been stressing me out lately, and I'm not sure if I'm being unreasonable. When we first signed the lease, Jenna told me that she wasn't the type to throw wild parties, and she promised that it wouldn't be a problem. I'm a bit of a homebody, and I value peace and quiet when I get home from work, so that was one of the main things I asked about. Jenna assured me that she respected the need for quiet, and that we'd keep our home relatively calm. Everything was fine for the first few months, and I honestly didn't think much of it. But then, around the 6-month mark, things started to change. Jenna started having small get-togethers at the apartment, which I didn't mind at first. A few friends over, a little music, and some drinks. It was pretty casual. But over the course of the next few months, the gatherings began to get larger and louder. Eventually, it turned into full-blown parties on the weekends. I would come home after work, and there would be loud music blaring, strangers walking around, and a general sense of chaos in what was supposed to be my quiet home. I tried to address it calmly the first few times. I told Jenna that I didn't mind her having people over, but that I needed her to keep it at a reasonable volume, especially during the week when I had early mornings. She apologized and promised that she would keep things quieter. However, nothing changed. It only got worse. The noise would go on until 2 or 3 a.m., and sometimes even later, especially on Friday nights. I found myself increasingly stressed, sleep-deprived, and irritated. It got to the point where I couldn't focus on anything at home, and I started avoiding the apartment altogether, spending nights at friends' places or even staying at my parents' house. A few weeks ago, I had had enough. I had been out of town for a few days for work, and when I came back, I found the apartment in complete disarray. There were empty bottles all over the living room, furniture moved around, and the smell of stale alcohol lingering in the air. I was so frustrated at this point that I called Jenna and told her that we needed to have a serious conversation about the parties. When we sat down, I explained that the constant parties were taking a toll on me. I told her that I had been more than patient and had tried to compromise, but I was at my limit. I reminded her that she had promised me when we moved in that parties wouldn't be a problem. She apologized, but her apology felt insincere to me. She said she didn't realize how much it bothered me and that she would try to keep it down in the future. I told her that wasn't enough anymore. I told her that I couldn't live in an environment where I never knew if I was going to be able to sleep at night or have any peace and quiet. I asked her to either stop throwing parties altogether or find another place to live. Jenna got really defensive. She said I was being unreasonable and that I was trying to control her social life. She said that as long as she wasn't breaking any laws or making noise at a ridiculous hour, she should be able to have friends over and enjoy herself. I told her that I wasn't trying to control her, but that this was a shared living space and I deserved to have a peaceful environment, too. She started getting frustrated and said that I was overreacting. She accused me of not being a fun person and said that I was making her feel like a bad roommate for wanting to have a good time. After a long back and forth, we finally came to an agreement. She said she would scale back the parties and keep the noise down on the weekends. I thought we were on the same page. For a couple of weeks, things were relatively calm. But then, last weekend, Jenna threw a huge party, bigger than anything I had ever seen at the apartment. The noise was unbearable. The party didn't stop until 3 a.m., and the place was an absolute mess. I had to leave again to stay with a friend because I couldn't deal with it. When I got back the next day, I was livid. I confronted Jenna again and told her that this was the last straw. I said that she had broken the promise she made and that I couldn't keep living in these conditions. She told me I was overreacting again and that I was being too harsh on her. I told her that I wasn't being harsh. I was just enforcing a boundary that I had every right to have. I told her that if she couldn't respect my need for peace and quiet, then we would have to end our living arrangement. Jenna got upset and told me that I was making her feel unwelcome in her own home. She said that it was unfair of me to ask her to stop having fun and that I should have just moved out if I didn't like it. She accused me of being a buzzkill and that I was ruining our friendship by not being more understanding. I know that I have every right to expect peace in my home, especially when I've been more than reasonable in trying to compromise. But now I'm questioning whether I'm being too rigid. Maybe I'm being a bit too uptight about the noise and should just try to be more tolerant of her social life. I understand that she wants to have fun, but I also think that living with someone means respecting each other's needs. AITA for refusing to allow my roommate to have loud parties after she promised she wouldn't. AITA for not attending my friend's baby shower after she made a comment about my infertility. I, 32F, have a friend, Claire, 31F, who I've known since college. We've been close for many years, and while we don't talk every day, we make a point to catch up whenever we can. She's always been one of those friends who's been there for me through thick and thin. I've tried to be there for her in the same way. We've always had an understanding that we're in each other's corner, no matter what's going on in our lives. Last year, Claire told me that she and her husband were trying for a baby. At the time, I wasn't sure how to feel about it. It wasn't that I wasn't happy for her. It's just that I've been struggling with infertility for the past few years, and it's something that I don't talk about much. It's hard for me to get excited about pregnancy news when I've been through several rounds of IVF, countless doctor's appointments, and so many moments of disappointment that I've lost track. I've been trying to keep my head above water emotionally, but it's been a tough journey. Claire knew about my struggles, and we'd talked about it in the past, but I never went into detail. It's just something I don't feel comfortable sharing with everyone, and it's not something I bring up unless I have to. So when Claire told me she was pregnant, I was happy for her, but I couldn't deny that it stung. I was excited to hear about her news, but I also felt a little bit of jealousy and sadness creeping in. I didn't let it show, though. I congratulated her and told her I was thrilled. She seemed really happy and even mentioned that she was due in a few months. I tried my best to be supportive, but inside I was struggling. Fast forward to a few weeks ago when Claire invited me to her baby shower. At first, I wasn't sure what to do. I've been avoiding baby-related events because they remind me of what I don't have, and I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to handle it. But I didn't want to let my feelings get in the way of supporting my friend, so I RSVP'd and told her I'd be there. I figured it would be a nice way to celebrate her and show her that I was there for her, even if it was hard for me. The day of the shower came, and I was nervous. I bought her a gift, which I'd spent some time picking out because I wanted it to be something special. I put on a smile and showed up at the venue. It was a lovely event, lots of decorations, food, and games. Claire was glowing, and her excitement was contagious. I did my best to enjoy the party, but I found myself withdrawing more and more as the event went on. I wasn't the only one who seemed to feel out of place. There were several other women at the shower who were also pregnant or had young children, and the conversations naturally gravitated toward baby talk. I felt like I was on the outside looking in. At one point, I found myself sitting with a few of the guests, and we were chatting about general things. Claire joined the conversation, and at one point, she casually mentioned how she was so relieved to be pregnant after trying for a while. I don't remember the exact words she used, but she said something along the lines of, "It's so crazy how easy it was for me to get pregnant." I honestly didn't think it would happen this quickly, especially compared to some of the stories I've heard. I can't imagine what it must be like to struggle with infertility. It must be so hard to never get that good news. I froze. I could feel my stomach drop. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. I'm sure Claire didn't mean any harm by it, and I don't think she even realized how insensitive the comment was, but hearing her talk about infertility like that, so casually, made me feel like I was invisible. It was one of those moments when everything in the room felt like it was happening in slow motion. I felt exposed and embarrassed for having put myself in that situation. I tried to brush it off and keep the smile on my face, but I was struggling to hold back tears. I wanted to leave, but I didn't want to make a scene, and I didn't want to ruin Claire's day. So I stayed for a little while longer, but I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't stop thinking about her comment. I could feel myself shutting down emotionally. After a while, I excused myself and left early, pretending I had to go meet a friend. I didn't want to be there anymore, and I didn't know how to handle the emotional overload. The next day, I texted Claire to thank her for the invite and to let her know that I had enjoyed the event, even though I had to leave early. She replied with a cute message saying she was so happy I came and that she couldn't wait for me to meet the baby. I didn't respond right away. I was still processing everything that had happened. After a couple of days, I decided that I needed to address what had happened. I couldn't just sweep it under the rug, especially since I've been so open and honest with Claire in the past. So, I sent her a message explaining how her comment had made me feel. I told her that while I knew she didn't mean to hurt me, her words really affected me. I explained that infertility was something I had been struggling with privately for years, and that hearing her talk so lightly about it in front of me was incredibly painful. I told her that I had tried to be supportive, but it had become too much, and I needed her to understand why I couldn't be there for her baby shower the same way I wanted to be. Claire's response was immediate, and to be honest, I wasn't sure what to expect. She apologized profusely, saying that she didn't mean to make me feel bad and that she had no idea how sensitive the topic was for me. She admitted that she should have been more mindful and that she was sorry for causing me pain. She said she understood if I needed space and that she didn't want to lose our friendship over something like this. Her apology was heartfelt, and I appreciated it, but I still felt hurt. I'm not sure if I'll ever feel the same about the situation. I've spent so much of my life feeling like I'm falling short in this area, and hearing someone I care about talk so casually about something that has caused me so much pain made me feel like I didn't matter. I've tried to move past it, but I'm struggling. Now, I'm left wondering if I overreacted. A part of me feels like maybe I should have just let it go and not made it a bigger deal than it was. Another part of me feels like I had every right to be upset and to speak up about it. I don't want to lose my friendship with Claire, but I also don't want to feel like my feelings don't matter. So, AITA for not attending my friend's baby shower after she made a comment about my infertility. AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's birthday party after she excluded my daughter from the guest list. I, 35F, have a best friend, Emma, 34F, who I've known since high school. We've been through thick and thin together and have always had each other's backs. I've always considered her to be family, and she's been one of the most important people in my life. I also have a daughter, Lily, 6, who means the world to me. She's my only child, and I've always tried to be the best mom I can be. For as long as I can remember, Emma and I have always celebrated our birthdays together. We're born just a week apart, and it's always been a tradition to have a joint birthday party every year. Over the years, we've kept the same routine of a big birthday bash where we invite close friends, family, and loved ones. Lily has always been included in the celebrations, and Emma has always been so sweet with her. She loves Lily and often refers to her as her little niece. This year, Emma's birthday is coming up, and she's been planning a big party with a theme, catering, and everything. She's really excited about it, and I've been looking forward to it as well. A few weeks ago, Emma called me to tell me the details. She said she had finalized the guest list and was really looking forward to seeing everyone. I asked her who was coming, and she went through the names of various people we both know, mutual friends, family members, and so on. But when she listed the guests, she didn't mention Lily. I was confused and asked her directly, "What about Lily? Is she coming too?" Emma seemed hesitant at first, and then she said, "Well, I've been thinking about it, and I'm not sure I want her at the party this year." I was shocked. I've never known Emma to have any issues with Lily, so I pressed her for an explanation. Emma said that she was planning a more adult-themed party this year, and that the guest list was more for people her age, not kids. She added that she felt it would be awkward to have a child there with all the alcohol and adult conversations. She said she hoped I understood and that she didn't mean anything personal by it. I was really taken aback. I understand that adults want to have their own space sometimes, but the idea that my daughter, who has always been included in every other party, was now being excluded was hurtful. I told Emma that I wasn't comfortable with her excluding Lily from her birthday party, especially considering how much Emma has always seemed to love her. I tried to explain how hurtful it would be for Lily to feel left out, especially since she has always been so excited to go to Emma's parties. Emma responded by saying that I was overreacting and that it wasn't a big deal. She said I could still come to the party, but she insisted that Lily shouldn't come this time. I was upset, but didn't want to cause a huge scene. I asked if she could reconsider and at least make an exception for Lily, but Emma refused. She said that this year, she just wanted to have a more grown-up party, and she didn't think it was the right time for a child to be there. She even mentioned that if Lily came, it would change the vibe of the party. At this point, I felt incredibly hurt and disrespected. I've always considered Emma to be family, and for her to suddenly exclude my daughter, who has always been close to her, felt like a slap in the face. I tried to stay calm, but I told Emma that if Lily wasn't invited, then I wasn't going to attend the party. I explained that Lily is a huge part of my life, and I wasn't willing to leave her out in the cold just for the sake of an adult party. I told Emma that it wasn't just about the party. It was about the principle of the situation. If I couldn't bring my daughter, then I wouldn't feel comfortable being there either. Emma got quiet for a moment and then said, "I don't think you're being fair about this. It's just one party. I'm still your best friend, and this doesn't change anything. I just don't think it's the right time for kids." She sounded frustrated and even a little hurt, and then she added, "I don't want to argue about this anymore. I made my decision, and I'm not changing it." I was upset and frustrated, and at that moment, I told her that I couldn't support her decision. I explained that it wasn't about the party itself, but about the fact that she was willing to exclude Lily. It felt like she was choosing a party vibe over the relationship we had built over years. I said I was sorry, but I wasn't going to attend if Lily wasn't invited. That was 2 weeks ago, and since then, things have been awkward between us. Emma hasn't reached out to me much, and when she does, it's usually about something unrelated. I can tell she's hurt by my decision, but I'm also hurt by hers. I understand that people want to have their own celebrations, but it feels like she's drawing a line in the sand when it comes to my daughter. We've been through so much together, and it's hard to accept that she would make this kind of choice, especially when I've always been there for her. The more I think about it, the more I feel like I did the right thing in standing my ground. Lily's feelings matter to me, and I can't just let her feel like she's not wanted by someone who's supposed to be family. I don't think I'm being unreasonable, but I'm starting to wonder if I could have handled it differently. Was I too harsh by saying I wouldn't attend the party? Was it wrong to expect Emma to reconsider inviting Lily? AITA for refusing to attend my best friend's birthday party after she excluded my daughter from the guest list? AITA for not letting my sister's kids stay at my house because they always disrespect my rules? I, 30F, have a sister, Rachel, 33F, who has 3 kids, Lily, 12F, James, 10M, and Emma, 6F. I love my niece and nephews, but I've always had a pretty clear boundary when it comes to my house and my personal space. I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's pretty much my sanctuary. I've always been strict about my house rules. I like things neat and organized. I don't tolerate loud or disruptive behavior, and I expect people to respect my space. This is mostly because I work from home, and it's essential for me to have a calm and quiet environment to get things done. Rachel and her family live about 30 minutes away, and we don't see each other too often. I love my sister, but we've never been on the same page about a lot of things, especially when it comes to her kids. Over the years, I've had my share of complaints about their behavior, but I've always tried to be understanding since they're just kids. However, I've started to realize that their behavior isn't just typical kid stuff. It's gotten to the point where it's affecting me, and I'm no longer willing to overlook it. Here's the thing. When Rachel asks if her kids can come stay with me, I don't mind having them over for a day or a few hours, but I made it very clear that I'm not comfortable with them staying overnight unless they can follow my house rules. Rachel knows I don't tolerate disruptive behavior, but whenever her kids stay at my place, it feels like chaos. They've ruined things around my apartment, disrespected my personal items, and made it hard for me to work and relax. I've had issues with them fighting, yelling, and leaving messes everywhere. I've repeatedly asked Rachel to talk to her kids about it, but every time she brushes it off, saying they're just being kids and that I should be more patient with them. A few months ago, Rachel asked if her kids could stay at my apartment for the weekend. I was initially hesitant, but she promised they'd be on their best behavior and that she'd talk to them beforehand. She said she wanted a weekend away with her husband and thought it would be a good opportunity for me to spend time with the kids. I reluctantly agreed, thinking maybe this time it would be different. The first night they were in my place, everything started off okay. We had dinner, played a few games, and watched a movie. But around 10 p.m., things began to go downhill. Lily started arguing with James over the remote control. Emma was running around the living room, and all I could hear was yelling and complaining. I told them multiple times to calm down and go to bed, but they ignored me. Finally, I had to raise my voice and tell them, "If you don't stop, I'm going to have to call your mom to come get you." That got their attention, and for a while, things quieted down. But the next morning, it was even worse. I was trying to work on some freelance projects in my office, but every 5 minutes, one of them was knocking on my door, asking for snacks, to watch TV, or just to get my attention. I told them I needed to focus and that they needed to entertain themselves, but they kept coming in and bothering me. It was like they had no concept of personal space or boundaries. By mid-afternoon, I was so frustrated that I had to step outside for a walk to clear my head. When I came back, the apartment was a mess. Empty snack bags, toys all over the living room, and a half-eaten sandwich left on my desk. I immediately called Rachel and told her that I couldn't do this anymore, that her kids had crossed the line, and that I didn't feel comfortable having them stay at my place again unless things changed. She didn't take it well. She said I was being too hard on them and that I needed to be more understanding. She told me that they were just kids and that I should make more of an effort to bond with them. I tried to explain that it wasn't about me not wanting to spend time with them. It was about the fact that they were disrespecting my home and my time. I've always been clear with Rachel about my boundaries, and I felt like she wasn't listening to me. She got defensive and said I was being too uptight and that I was punishing the kid for things they didn't even understand. I ended up ending the conversation, feeling drained and upset. A few weeks ago, Rachel asked if she could drop the kids off at my place again while she and her husband went out of town for the weekend. I was already feeling uneasy about it, but she promised they'd behave and that I shouldn't worry. She even offered to pay me for watching them, but I told her it wasn't about the money. I just didn't want the hassle. Still, she convinced me to say yes, saying I should try to give it another shot and that she'd make sure the kids understood the rules this time. The second time they came over, I made sure to lay out the rules from the beginning. I told them that I expected them to follow the schedule I set, respect my personal space, and keep the noise level down. I reminded them that if they broke any of these rules, they would need to leave. They seemed to nod along and promised to be good. But within an hour, they were back to their old habits. Emma started playing with my expensive makeup in the bathroom, and Lily was shouting at James for no reason. When I went to check on them, I found that they had spilled juice all over my kitchen floor and didn't clean it up. I was at my breaking point. I called Rachel and told her that I couldn't handle it anymore. I said that if she didn't come pick them up immediately, I was going to have to end the visit early. She was furious. She told me I was overreacting and that I couldn't expect the kids to be perfect all the time. She said I was being unfair to them and that they were just acting out because they weren't used to the rules of my home. I told her I wasn't willing to put up with this kind of behavior anymore, and I hung up. She showed up to pick them up a few hours later, and when she did, she didn't even apologize. She just gave me a cold look and took the kids without saying much. Since then, we haven't talked as much. I know she's upset with me, but I'm starting to feel like I can't keep sacrificing my peace just to make her happy. Now, a few weeks have passed, and I've been thinking a lot about this situation. I'm really starting to wonder if I'm in the wrong here. A part of me feels like I should just let it go and try again, but another part of me feels like I'm not being unreasonable. I've set clear boundaries, and I've tried to be patient, but every time I allow her kids to stay with me, they completely disregard my rules. I'm honestly exhausted from the back and forth and the constant feeling of being disrespected. So, AITA for not letting my sister's kids stay at my house because they always disrespect my rules? I know she's frustrated, but I feel like I've tried everything, and it's just not working. AITA for confronting my brother about his constant belittling of my job? I, 30F, have a brother, Ryan, 28M, who has always had a certain attitude when it comes to my career. We've always been close growing up, but as we've gotten older, I've started to feel a growing sense of frustration with how he treats my job and my profession. I've been working as a teacher for the past 5 years, and I absolutely love it. I chose this career because I feel passionate about helping kids and making a positive impact on their lives. I'm not making a fortune, but I get by, and I find fulfillment in what I do. Ryan, on the other hand, is an engineer. He works at a prestigious firm, makes a 6-figure salary, and is always boasting about his job and success. I've never been one to compare myself to others, and I'm proud of the path I've chosen for myself. However, for some reason, Ryan constantly undermines and belittles my career choices. It's not just light teasing or playful banter. He genuinely seems to think that teaching is beneath him or that it's not a real job. It started a couple of years ago when we were at a family dinner. The topic of work came up, and I mentioned that I had just received a small promotion at my school and would be taking on more responsibilities. I was excited about the opportunity to work with more students and potentially impact their lives in a greater way. I expected support from my family, especially Ryan, but instead, he gave me a smirk and said, "Oh, how cute. You're going to be the big boss of the second grade class now." Everyone at the table kind of laughed, and I brushed it off, but it stung. I didn't say anything at the time, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was looking down on my job. The comments continued over time. Whenever we talked about work, Ryan would ask things like, "So, how's your daycare job going?" Or, "I bet it's easy to teach kids. Don't you just tell them to color and sing songs all day?" Even when we were discussing things like educational policies or new teaching methods, Ryan would mockingly dismiss them, saying, "Why does anyone need to study all that when all you're doing is babysitting?" I tried to ignore it, thinking that maybe he just didn't understand what my job really entailed. But it was getting harder and harder to let his comments slide. I've spent years of my life studying, working hard, and putting everything I have into teaching, and to hear him belittle it like it's nothing was starting to wear on me. The tipping point came a few weeks ago when we were at another family gathering. Ryan had invited his friends over for a barbecue, and I came along with my partner. Everything was fine at first, but as the evening wore on, the topic of work came up again. Ryan, of course, took the opportunity to make a comment about my teaching. He said, "So, what's the latest? Are you still doing the teaching kids how to color inside the lines thing?" This time, I couldn't let it slide anymore. I felt like I had been patient for long enough. I snapped. I told Ryan that I was getting really tired of his constant belittling of my job and that he needed to stop acting like teaching was something less than what he does. I reminded him that my job required a lot of skill, education, and dedication, and that I wasn't just babysitting. I told him that I didn't appreciate him treating my profession as if it was beneath him, and that I worked hard to make a difference in the lives of my students. He looked at me with a mixture of surprise and annoyance, but I could see the discomfort in his eyes. Ryan tried to brush it off with a weak, "I was just joking, calm down," but I wasn't having it. I told him that his jokes were hurtful and that if he didn't respect my career, he could keep his opinions to himself. The whole conversation went silent, and my parents quickly stepped in to change the subject. Later, Ryan pulled me aside and told me I was being dramatic, saying that I shouldn't take everything so seriously. He even told me that people like me, who work in education, need to have a sense of humor, or we'd never last. He didn't apologize, and that's what made me even angrier. Ever since that conversation, things between Ryan and me have been tense. We're both adults, and I'm not the type to hold grudges, but I've been struggling to let this go. I've talked to my partner about it, and they agree that Ryan's behavior is disrespectful. My partner has suggested that I talk to Ryan again, but I'm not sure if it's worth it. I feel like I've made my feelings clear, and I don't want to keep fighting over something that should be simple to understand. My family seems to be divided on the issue. Some agree with me, saying that Ryan should respect my job and stop making jokes about it. Others think I overreacted and that I should just let it go, since Ryan didn't mean anything by it. But to me, it's not just about the jokes. It's about the lack of respect for my profession and the constant undermining of what I do. I'm torn. I don't want to cause a rift in my family, but I also don't want to keep letting Ryan treat me like this. So, AITA for confronting my brother about his constant belittling of my job? Did I overreact, or is he the one being disrespectful? AITA for refusing to let my parents meet my newborn because of their constant interference with my parenting? I, 30F, just gave birth to my first child, a baby boy, 2 months ago. My husband, Mark, 32M, and I are over the moon. We've been trying for a while, and we're so excited to become parents. The first few weeks after our son, Noah, was born were incredibly challenging, but also the most rewarding time of my life. Like most new parents, we were trying to figure things out, and I was looking for support from the people I trust most, my family. My parents, who I'll refer to as mom and dad, have always been a big part of my life. Growing up, they were very involved in everything I did. They were supportive, but in hindsight, they also liked to have a say in almost everything. Even as an adult, I've often felt like they still treat me like I'm a teenager in some ways. I love them, but our relationship has always been a bit controlling at times. When I got pregnant, I knew that I wanted to do things my own way as a mother. I've read books, taken classes, and done my research. I wanted to have a birth plan, a parenting style, and a way of raising Noah that worked for me and Mark. We agreed to be hands-on parents and want to make our own decisions, but from the moment I told my parents I was expecting, they started offering unsolicited advice. At first, I thought it was sweet. They were excited, and I appreciated their experience. But it quickly became overwhelming. Mom especially would call me daily to ask if I had prepared properly for the birth and whether I had everything I needed for the nursery. She would ask questions like, "Have you decided on a sleep training method?" Or, "How are you going to discipline him when he gets older?" Even though I hadn't asked for her advice, she would give it freely, and it became increasingly frustrating. Mark and I hadn't made decisions yet on some of these things because we wanted to be flexible and see how things went once Noah arrived. When Noah was born, things escalated. My mom insisted on coming over to help after we got home from the hospital, and I felt like I had no choice but to let her. She showed up with bags of baby clothes she thought we'd forgotten to buy and immediately started rearranging things around the house. She even rearranged Noah's nursery to her liking. Mark and I were both taken aback, but I didn't want to cause any conflict, so I just let it go, hoping she would calm down. It only got worse after that. My mom started showing up uninvited, sometimes multiple times a week, to help with the baby. She would try to take over everything, from giving Noah a bottle to trying to put him down for naps. If I tried to do it myself, she would hover and offer unsolicited advice on how I should do things differently. She once even told me I was holding Noah wrong and that he needed to be held in a proper way for his spine. I was exhausted, overwhelmed, and felt like I couldn't even parent my own child without her judgment. At the same time, Dad started making passive-aggressive comments about my parenting. One time, he told me that my decision to breastfeed was old-fashioned and that I should just give him formula like normal people. Another time, when I was explaining how he planned to start sleep training in a few months, he interrupted me and said, "Why don't you just let him cry it out? That's what works." I could tell my parents were frustrated that I wasn't following their advice, and they started getting more persistent with their suggestions. Mark and I decided we needed to set some boundaries. We had a serious conversation and agreed that we would handle the parenting decisions on our own. We needed time to adjust to this new life, and constant interference wasn't helping. We told my parents that we wanted some space to settle into our routine, and that meant no more uninvited visits or unsolicited advice. I expressed that we loved them and appreciated their excitement, but we needed them to respect our parenting decisions. It didn't go over well. Mom immediately started crying and accusing me of being ungrateful. She said she was just trying to help and that she had raised me, so she knew what she was doing. Dad backed her up and said that I shouldn't be so stubborn and should listen to my parents, who had more experience. They both said they were just trying to make sure I didn't make the same mistakes they felt they made when raising me. I felt guilty for a moment, but then I remembered why we had set these boundaries in the first place. I didn't want to be controlled by their opinions and methods. I wanted to raise Noah the way Mark and I saw fit. After the conversation, my parents started making less frequent attempts to visit, but they still pushed their opinions every chance they got. My mom would text me things like, "I think you should try the new formula brand I saw at the store," or "I heard a great sleep training program that's worked for some families. Have you looked into it?" Every time, I would either ignore the text or respond with a polite, "Thanks, but we're going with a different method." The final straw came last week when my parents called and asked if they could come over to meet Noah in person. They had been seeing pictures and FaceTiming with us regularly, but they hadn't yet had an in-person visit because of the boundaries we set. I told them I wasn't comfortable with them visiting just yet. I explained that I felt like they still hadn't fully respected our need for space and that I wanted to have some time where we didn't feel pressured or judged. I told them that once they could respect our parenting decisions, I would be happy to arrange a visit, but until then, I needed some distance. They were furious. My mom yelled at me, saying that I was keeping her from her grandchild and that she had the right to meet him. She accused me of being overly sensitive and isolating them from their own family. Dad was equally upset, saying that I was being unreasonable and that I was hurting them by refusing to let them see Noah. I feel like I'm stuck between wanting to be a good daughter and wanting to be a good mother. I want my parents to be a part of Noah's life, but I don't want them undermining my authority as a parent or constantly making me second-guess my decisions. I'm trying to stand my ground, but I feel incredibly guilty about it. I know they're excited, but I feel like they're crossing lines they shouldn't be. So, AITA for refusing to let my parents meet my newborn until they respect my parenting decisions and stop interfering with my choices. AITA for asking my parents to stop visiting my house after they let my brother's dog ruin my garden. I, 28F, have always been very particular about my home and the space I've created for myself. I live alone in a cozy house that I bought 2 years ago. I've put a lot of time and effort into making it a place where I can unwind after long work days. One of the things I'm most proud of is my garden. I've spent a lot of time planting flowers, vegetables, and herbs, and I've managed to create a small but beautiful space in my backyard. It's a place where I can relax and enjoy being outside, and I've invested a lot of money and effort into making it perfect. I have a brother, Mark, 30M, who is married and has a dog named Rusty. Rusty is an energetic and somewhat unruly golden retriever. Mark and his wife, Jenny, love the dog to pieces, but they've never been the best at training him. Rusty is often a bit of a handful. He jumps on people, chews on things, and is generally untrained when it comes to basic dog manners. While I love that Mark and Jenny are so devoted to him, I've always been concerned about the chaos Rusty causes whenever he's around. The issue started a couple of months ago when my parents, let's call them Mom and Dad, came to visit for a weekend. They live a couple of hours away, and they've always been very supportive of me buying my own home. They were excited to see the new place and spend time with me. I had invited them over for lunch, and everything was going well until Mark and Jenny showed up unannounced, bringing Rusty with them. At first, I was a little surprised because Mark hadn't mentioned that he was bringing the dog, but I didn't want to make a scene. I never said anything about Rusty coming over because I hadn't expected it. I don't mind dogs in general, but Rusty is a different story. I've never liked him being around my house because he has this tendency to get into everything, and I didn't want him running around my garden, digging up my plants, or chewing on things. Before I could even ask Mark and Jenny if Rusty was going to stay outside, the dog darted into my backyard. I tried to stop him, but it was too late. Rusty was already running around my garden, and I could see the damage happening. He was digging at the soil, jumping over plants, and knocking over some of my pots. I called out to Mark, but he was too busy chatting with my parents to notice. Jenny seemed oblivious to what was happening, and my parents didn't say anything either. I went outside and tried to get Rusty to calm down, but the more I tried to stop him, the worse it got. At this point, I could feel my blood pressure rising. I love my family, but I was genuinely angry. I'd spent so much time cultivating that garden, and in a matter of minutes, Rusty was destroying it. I asked Mark if he could please take Rusty inside, or at least keep him out of the garden. He seemed annoyed that I was being so particular and said, "He's just being a dog, calm down." I didn't want to cause a big fight, so I just gritted my teeth and tried to salvage what I could. The rest of the afternoon was a blur. I kept an eye on Rusty, but he continued to wreak havoc on the garden. My parents didn't seem to notice or care about the damage, and Mark and Jenny didn't seem bothered by it either. After they left, I spent hours replanting flowers, fixing the soil, and cleaning up. It wasn't just the physical work that bothered me. It was the complete disregard for my home and the effort I'd put into it. The next day, I sent a text to Mark, letting him know that I wasn't happy with how Rusty had been allowed to destroy my garden. I told him that while I didn't mind them visiting, I wasn't comfortable with Rusty being around my plants, especially since he hadn't been trained to respect boundaries. I kindly asked him not to bring the dog next time, especially since I'd put so much work into my garden. I also asked him to be more considerate when visiting, as it wasn't just about the dog, but also about respecting my space. Mark responded with a short, "Okay, sorry about that," and didn't say much else. I thought he might get the message, but I didn't realize just how upset he was. The next time they came over, about a month later, they brought Rusty again, without asking me first. I was furious. When I saw the dog running around my backyard again, I couldn't hold back. I asked them, in front of my parents, why they thought it was okay to bring Rusty when I had specifically asked them not to. Mark got defensive and said, "He's just a dog, and he's part of the family. You can't expect us to leave him at home every time we visit." I told him that I understood that Rusty was a part of their family, but he wasn't a part of my family, and he wasn't welcome to destroy my garden. I reminded them of the damage he had caused last time, and that I had spent hours repairing it. I told Mark that if they were going to keep bringing him, I would have to stop hosting them at my house altogether. Things got uncomfortable quickly. My parents were awkwardly silent, and Ginny didn't say anything to support me. Mark became more upset, telling me I was being too harsh and that I should just let it go. He said that I needed to get over it and that it's just a garden, it's not the end of the world. I didn't agree. It was more than just a garden to me. It was something I had worked hard on and had taken pride in. I ended up telling them that if they were going to keep bringing Rusty, I wasn't comfortable having them visit. It was a pretty blunt statement, but I felt like I had to set a boundary. I told them I loved them, but I couldn't allow them to ignore my requests anymore. Mark got angry, and Ginny didn't seem to understand what the big deal was. My parents looked uncomfortable and didn't say much, and Mark ended up storming out with Ginny and Rusty in tow. I haven't heard from them much since then, and I feel like the whole situation has strained our relationship. I've been told by some friends that I was in the right to stand up for myself and my space, but I feel bad about how things have turned out. I don't want to lose touch with my family, but I also don't think it's too much to ask them to respect my home and my boundaries. I've been getting some passive-aggressive comments from my parents about being too controlling, and I'm starting to feel like I made the wrong decision by asking them not to visit if they brought Rusty. So, AITA for asking my parents to stop visiting my house after they let my brother's dog ruin my garden. I know it might seem like a small issue, but it's something I've put a lot of time and effort into, and I don't feel like I'm being unreasonable. Should I have just let it go, or was I right to stand firm? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.